right, welcome to the Game or Die podcast. I am your host, Ryan Moore, and I want to talk about some games because, man, I've been playing some games lately. So we're going to dive right into it, and I want to talk about a game that I started in 2018, and I just finished a couple days ago, and it is 2021 right now. There is a bug flying all around. Oh, well. Anyways, so I started this game just a couple years ago when it first came out on PC, and I want to give a little bit of backstory. The Yakuza series is a series that I kind of remember hearing about, just kind of some people at the game store always talking about that series. We would get some copies in, I'd, sell them right away. I never really picked them up or looked at them. It was never something that really interested me. But when I started watching a Giant Bomb, they did a playthrough of the new game in the series called Yakuza 0. And that was in 2017. And watching this gameplay, I was like, man, I feel like I'm missing out if that's what this series is all about. I got a lot of big vibes from the Shenmue games. And I'm not a big Shenmue fan. I never really played much of the game. I played probably about maybe 2 or 3 hours of Shenmue 2. I watched my friend Andrew play through Shenmue 1 years ago when it came out on the Dreamcast, but it was never a game that really interested me for whatever reason. It's just, I wasn't really into the Japanese culture. I was not really interested in a lot of mini games, and the big sprawling story was really interesting, but nothing ever came of it, right? I mean, 2 decades later, we've got a third game that came out last year, or yeah, a little over a year and a half ago, and like they're saying it's not ever going to be finished. Like it's never going to finish. They're never going to finish that series up the way it's supposed to, or it was pitched originally. So Yakuza kind of picked up the Shenmue ball and ran with it, and holy crap did they run with it. Yakuza is such a better series than Shenmue. As much as, people might have nostalgia for that series, Yakuza is so much better executed in every facet. It tells the story. It gets much more story out of it. Like all of Shenmue 3 or 1, the first Shenmue game basically is you having your dad killed at the very beginning of the game. You play for about, I think, 7 or 8 hours, maybe even more than that. No, it's got to be more than that. It's got to be like 12 hours of gameplay. And then you just find the guy who did the murdering of your father. The guy who killed your father basically went off to Hong Kong, and you go on a ship. That's literally the entire story of Shenmue. Your dad dies, and you find the name of the guy and where he's going, and you go and you jump on a ship to Hong Kong. That is the entire game. Yes, there's a lot of little things here and there, but it is not, there's no big plot points in that series or in that game. And then Shenmue 2, I remember playing it on the Xbox because I was like, dude, the Xbox is basically Dreamcast 2. And I love that those systems, but I never really paid attention to the Shenmue series. And then 3, I just have zero desire to play it or anything like that. But holy crap, Shenmue is like the brain of it, and then Yakuza just takes that and expands on every single idea that Shenmue started. So, for those of you who are uninitiated with the Yakuza series, like I was several years ago, Yakuza basically follows the story of Kiryu. And Kiryu is a Yakuza, and he was basically an orphan. He was brought up and taken in by one of the Yakuza family members and brought up to be a Yakuza, Japanese mafia, right? So when they go through this game, it spans decades. And it's not just a single game, it's an entire series. And it's not like, 2 or 3 games. It's like 9 at this point, technically. So you have Yakuza 1 that came out on the PS1, or sorry, wow, the PS2. And then you have Yakuza 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, and you have some offshoots. You have Yakuza Like a Dragon that came out last year in 2020. You have Judgment that came out in 2019. You have the remakes of Yakuza 1 and 2, which are Yakuza Kiwami and Kiwami 2. There's a ton of games in this series, and the storyline spans decades, and it's really, really interesting. So I remember hearing about it from, friends and people who came into the store and all that. And I was really interested in the story from what people told me, but it was never something that I really wanted to play. It was never something that I really cared to follow through with. I just heard the stories and some of the crazy crap that happened in the game and went, oh, that sounds really interesting, but it's a PS2, PS3, PS4 games. I don't even have my PS4 at the time when I was letting my friend borrow it. So when Yakuza 0 came out, it was like, oh, another Yakuza game, great. And they're also super behind in release schedule for America. Yakuza drops in Japan, and then like 2 years later, it finally gets released in America and localized, translated. So I was just never really into it, especially when those games were coming out and you're nearing the end of the PS3 and the games look like, just garbage. They look like PS2 games still. So I was never really into like playing those games because of the graphical aspect and then just how convoluted the story was, and also the jumping in point of I don't want to start a game in the middle of this series, especially if it's like 7 issues deep. So when they released Yakuza 0, it was touted as a prequel. And I went, prequels. But now looking back, man, I should have been so much more psyched about it, because when I watched Giant Bomb play through it, I realized that I was missing out on so much interesting stuff. Not just the action gameplay, but also the story as well. The story is really compelling. So I watched through them play it. It was a PS4 game. My friend at the time, Andrew, he borrowed my PS4, which I don't even know why I let him do that. It was just because I never used it. I had the PS4 since launch day, and I would only play PS4 games. And at that time, I just was not playing it at all. So I was like, dude, I'll just let you borrow it instead of you spending the money on a PS4, because why not? So I let him borrow it, and I thought it was going to be a couple months. It turned into like over a year of him borrowing it, and I was like, "Oh, there's a couple games that are coming out on the PS4 that I kind of want to play. I want my system back." But luckily, he was totally super cool about letting me have my system back, and then he bought Yakuza 0. And he was telling me all about it, and he was super psyched on it. And he's like, dude, you got to watch the Giant Bomb stuff. It's so cool. And I was like, maybe, at some point. I'm kind of busy right now. I just got married, and, I wasn't really into that series. I wanted to, we were playing through Zelda at the time, Breath of the Wild. And so I sat down and I started watching it, and I went, holy crap. And I remember the moment that it just clicked with me. They're playing this section where you're basically tracking someone down, and you follow them into a building, and you have to go all the way up the building. And it really, really reminded me of Die Hard and the Raid movies. And the Raid basically was Korean films. I think it's Korean. Vietnamese or Korean or some foreign films that are super action based, super violent, super crazy, and the whole storyline is about fighting this guy fighting his way up a tower, basically a building, floor by floor by floor. And you're doing the same thing. And also the remake of Judge Dredd that came out a couple years, about 2012, I want to say. The remake of that Judge Dredd movie is the same type of feeling too. So when I was watching these guys play through it, I went, dude, this is like Judge Dredd. Dude, this is like The Raid. Dude, this is like Die Hard. And I remember there was this point where he bursts into a bathroom and he has to fight these Yakuza guys in the bathroom. This is Kiryu, the main character that you play as. And he's fighting these guys in the bathroom and he's doing these action moves that are super ultra violent. He's taking people's heads and smashing them into urinals and curb stomping people on a sink and crap like that. And he's just crazy stuff is happening. You got a ton of particle effects with money flying everywhere. And it is just so action packed that I was like, dude, I have to play this. I have to play this. And so I watched the whole series, kind of on in the background because it is not dubbed. It is fully voice acted in Japanese. And I've just never been one of those people that really have gravitated to the Japanese culture. I love foreign films. I'll watch subtitled anything. It doesn't bother me. But the Japanese spoken language just is kind of boring to me. And so I lose interest in it if I'm not instantly focused. And during the time while that series was going on during Giant Bomb, when they were playing through it, I was doing a lot of computer work. And so I always had it on the background, listening to it, especially late at night after my wife went to sleep and I was up for several hours working and doing other stuff. I would have it on in the background and kind of listen to the commentary of what the guys were talking about while they were playing through the game. And I was like, dude, it sounds like a really interesting storyline. You've got this girl who's apparently blind who owns this, empty lot in the middle of this crowded city that they want to take over. The Yakuza is trying to battle. It's these two factions of Yakuza that are trying to basically own this little lot that will give them like ultimate power and control over the city in the underworld. And I was just like, dude, this is a really interesting story. And then also, you've got the split characters that you play as that I did not know when that game first came out. No one really told me about the whole you play as two characters, and those characters are totally different. And each of them have their ups and downs and their pros and cons and all that. And dude, it was just like, wow, this is a really interesting story. All that to say, I wanted to play the game, but it was on PS4. I lent my best friend the system, my system at the time, so I didn't have it. And then there was rumors of a PC version that was going to come out, and I was like, "Oh man, PC version, that sounds really, really, really good." And so I was like, maybe it'll come out, but I'll wait and I'll ask my friend to give me my PS4 back at some point. The game, got rave reviews everywhere. Everyone loved it. And then during the Game of the Year stuff for Giant Bomb that year, I don't want to get into a rant about 2017's Giant Bomb Game of the Year, but the game basically got snubbed, like hardcore. They played through it. Everyone talked about it. It was a lot of people's game of the year. They barely mentioned it, and it didn't even break the top 10 games. And some of those top 10 games in 2017's Giant Bomb Game of the Year list are just complete trash and not worthy of even being in the same sentence as the Yakuza series. So it just was, it was like oh, it's not in public consciousness, and I was following a Giant Bomb really hardcore at that point in time too. Like they were my main source of gaming info for the most part. I watched all of their videos, and this isn't like another a long form rant on Giant Bomb like I did a couple episodes ago when I talked about Brad, Vinny, and Alex leaving, but it was just like the start of the downfall of that site where it was like, oh, they're really not paying attention to what's actually happening in the real world. They're in their own little kind of bubble, and their views do not click with mine almost in the slightest. So it was just kind of something that really pushed my mindset away from that game series. And it was a bummer too, because I really, really, really wanted to play it. So when I finally did get my PS4 back, I was gonna play the game, but like I said, I heard rumblings of a PC version. And then Sega finally announced it because Sega publishes the series. They announced that they were going to do a PC port. in 2018. And so I was like, dude, I'll just wait. I'll wait. That's fine. And in the middle of the year, in the summer of 2018, we moved from houses from uh, Twin Peaks in the mountains to Running Springs in the mountains. This is about 20-minute drive, so not super far away, but a little higher up in the mountain. And when we moved, the game got released, like the day we got moved in. So the day after we moved in, I bought the game on Steam. I loaded it up and I started playing. And I got about, I want to say, 12 hours into that game. And I really, really, really enjoyed it. But it was right when we first moved in. And when you move, like there's a lot of stuff you got to get done to get settled in. And so I couldn't devote as much time over the weeks after we moved, and especially because of traveling and being gone for like a week at a time and stuff like that for work. I just kind of dropped the game and forgot about it. And that game is a lot of cutscenes. And that was kind of my main complaint or maybe gripe or just kind of noticing that the game takes the control away from the player a lot. And it also takes it away in a sense of you are waiting a lot. And it brought me back to the mindset of playing Skyrim on the 360. If you played Skyrim back when it first launched on the 360, you know that when you travel around and you go into buildings, which you do a lot, you have to go into taverns, you have to go into the Jarl's house, you have to, walk around and you travel into caves and all this. You stop and have to load in. And Yakuza kind of does the same thing when you're walking around the streets. There's bad guys that are, in little groups huddled around, and they'll see you or they'll follow you and chase you down until you have to interact with them and fight them. And those fights stop what you're doing, kind of give you a presentation of who you're fighting, and then drop you back into the game fight scene. And you got like this almost RPG like closed off area where you have to interact and fight with the bad guys. And then when you finish the fight and you knock down the last guy and kill them or drop their health to zero, they go into this blue screen, like oversaturated, burned out, like After Effects, Photoshop, slow motion, and go, "Roar!" And then you have to load into the main world again. So you do this constantly. And after a point, when you're trying to just kind of run around the area, you just get tired of it. And I got really tired of it where it was just like, here, and I'm playing on PC too, so it's not super long loading times or anything like that. It's like 2, 3 seconds, but you do it so much, and it's just like, oh, come on. I don't want to fight these guys. They're not really hard. And half of the time, especially later on in the game, you're so powerful that those fights last less than it does to load in and load out of the fight. And it just gets obnoxious. It's like, dude, stop. I'm trying to get stuff done. And there are so many side quests. And that's what I love about the game, though, is that there are so many little things here and there. And this is why it's so much better than Shenmue as well, is that the game itself, the main storyline, this overarching epic storyline of Kiryu and Majima, Yakuzas battling against each other, trying to have this common goal and blah, 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 blah. Like, that's all crazy and awesome. But you also have all these crazy little side quests. And they're not like Shenmue, where it's like, oh, help me find this thing, or do this fetch quest, or race this stupid warehouse truck. Like, it's none of that stuff. It is you're finding someone on the street, you're investing in their lives, you're getting something out of it. You get these weird, like, cultural differences and all this stuff. Like, there are so many little things. And this is all just Yakuza 0 that I'm talking about. This is the prequel to the game series that came out in 2017. It's also set in the 80s, which this is the decade that I was born in. It's near and dear to my heart. It's my favorite decade. It's the one I think that has the most, not nostalgia, but it has the most differences in tone, and strictly something that you can immediately understand and identify with as this is the 80s. It's just got that, you know, feel to it. It's kind of hard to describe. I've never really thought about describing the 80s in a way. Maybe I'll do that when I talk about Vice City at some point again. But this whole series has all these little tiny sub stories, and sometimes they might take 45 minutes, sometimes they just take a minute or two to get through. There's like, I think, 99 of them in the game. There's one where you meet like this director who wants to direct a music video, and you get basically like this Japanese Michael Jackson clone, and Steven Spielberg clone to help out, and you become like the PA, the public or the production assistant, and you start running and doing errands and grabbing like props and stuff like that. There's this one where this underage girl is being bullied into selling clothing that she doesn't want to, and her boyfriend thinks that she's a prostitute, and like all this weird stuff. Like there are so many little tiny stories. There's this weird pervert guy that you come across that is always super gross, and you're just like, go away. There's this one where you have to be a street performer, and you're like doing these stone statue men type of things that you have to help this street performer basically go to the bathroom and not get noticed that he's moving. Like all this crazy weird stuff. There's this guy who wants to wear a jacket and have the confidence to walk across the street. There's these encounters that you come across with this big hulking dude who's called Mr. Shakedown, who shakes you down for money, and you have to fight him or run away. There's so much little tiny stories here and there throughout the game that is just this the side stuff is almost as important. There's this guy who does who's in this band that you have to again like help give courage to and stuff like that. There's also all these mini games. Like there's this whole mini game subsection of the game where you have to run a cabaret club. And a cabaret club in Japan in the 80s is apparently kind of like a hostess club or a dating club where these ladies will sit down and talk to male patrons and get them to buy stuff, and like the guys get companionship out of. It's like an escort service almost. It is insane. There's so much stuff to it. And again, all the action is so crazy and over the top. It is incredible. So back in 2018, when I first started playing it, I was like really, really hardcore into the game. And I was like, dude, this is a really fun game. But my wife was not really into it. She did not care about it. She did not like watching me play it. And so I always kind of had to wait until like she went to bed so that I can play it by myself, because she was like, if we're going to be hanging out and stuff like that, I want to watch you play a game that I'm interested in as well, which I totally get. Like I said, that's why um, we were super into Breath of the Wild at the time, even though I was like, dude, I kind of want to play Yakuza. So it was a really fun game, and I'm super glad that I picked it back up and finished it. Over the years since 2018 when it came out, I've been kind of gradually going back to it every once in a while. I'll pick it up for like an hour, get a mission done or whatever, get a couple side stories done, and put it down for 4 or 5 months. And then play through a little bit more 4 or 5 months later. But this last time, when again, we just moved semi recently earlier this year, and I've been traveling pretty much nonstop. Like I'm home for like 2 weeks, and then I'm gone for a week, and then I'm home for another couple weeks, and then I'm gone for another couple or another week. So playing games has not just been something that I've had all the time in the world to do because I'm just traveling, and when I travel, I don't play games. It's just not something that I'm really interested in doing when I teach all day long and just want to relax. So I waited until the last several weeks. I've been doing a lot of classes from home, doing remote teaching, and I've had this time to finish up the series. And so the last several nights, I just dumped all the hours that I possibly could into the game to finish it up. And I was like, how far am from completing this game? Because the game felt like it was like an 80-hour game when I watched it. But playing through it, not doing all the side stuff, only doing the stuff that I was really interested about and kind of avoiding some of the other side stories that I really didn't care about. I think I got through it in a little over maybe about 12 hours or so. Let me check here. I can pull it up. Nope, I take that back. It was 37 hours. It was a 37-hour game for me. But I beat it and I loved it. And like I said, the cutscenes do take a long time too, which is another reason why I was just like, I don't know if I can handle this right now. I don't know if I can devote my time starting something at like 12 o'clock or midnight and then immediately jumping into this action game and then having the control pulled away from me and watching these 20-minute cutscenes at least they feel like 20 minutes. So I beat Yakuza 0, even though I started in 2018 and I finished it in 2021. It's such a good series. I am so happy that I finished it up. And I think one of the reasons why I picked it back up in the last week and a half, 2 weeks here, was because of E3. E3, Microsoft announced that on Game Pass, they were dumping a ton of new games with Bethesda, their purchase of Bethesda. There's a ton of Bethesda games on there. My wife plays Game Pass stuff because she plays Ark. So she's constantly on the Game Pass app. And while that's open, I kind of look at what else is available. And they had the whole Yakuza series drop, and they have Yakuza 0, which is the prequel, which is the starting point, and then Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2, which are remakes of Yakuza 1 and 2, like ground up remakes in the Yakuza 0 engine. So everything kind of looks very similar from the starting point. And then they went back and remastered Yakuza 3, Yakuza 4, and Yakuza 5. And then they have Yakuza 6. Then they also have Judgment. And then they also have Yakuza Like a Dragon as well. And the Like a Dragon is a very different games series. It's following a new protagonist. It is more of like an action RPG apparently. And I'm just like, from everything that I kind of heard about the game, I heard it was amazing. And I was just like, dude, I can't think about playing a new Yakuza game if I am not finishing Yakuza 0 at least from 2017, 2018. So I got to finish that. So I finished Yakuza 0, and then I own Yakuza Kiwami 1 and Kiwami 2, which again are the remakes of Yakuza 1 and Yakuza 2, the original games in the series on the PS2. So I immediately installed Kiwami and started it up and just basically am just going down the line in the series. And this is what I was talking about, I think, a couple episodes ago, where when I get into these fits of series, I really hold on tight. I basically just get a series in my mind that I want to play through. If it holds my attention through the first game in the series, I'm going to play through the entire series. So that's kind of my mission right now. And I think as I play through the series, I'm going to start kind of streamlining it a little bit. The reason why is because with Yakuza 0, I did a lot of the side story stuff. And then with Kiwami, again, Yakuza 1, I basically have spent 3 straight days just doing side missions. And it's because I got this item that I can equip to find people who need help, which are basically side quests. So I've just been walking around the map doing every side quest. And like I said, some of the side quests are pretty quick and pretty easy, but some of them can take, they're very dialogue heavy and they feature a couple fights. And sometimes they can be a little bit longer, 15, 20, 30 minutes sometimes. Because you're running back and forth through the map and all this stuff, and then you get sidetracked by random fight encounters, and then you also have other things that you have to do, and then you got to go buy items and come back and all this stuff. And it was just like, wow, I really, really, really maybe need to stop doing the side stuff at some point. So I'm 17 hours into Yakuza Kiwami, which I'm super happy about. I love the game. It's just one of those things where I need to kind of just go, oh, maybe I need to just stop for a little bit and play through the main storyline at this point, because 17 hours in, I'm nearing the end of the game as far as how long it is to beat the main game, but I've been doing a lot of side quests. So I'm probably, I'd say, about at least halfway through the game. But I'm not going to finish it, unfortunately, by the time I leave tomorrow morning on the plane, and then I'm not going to be back for another week. And then when I get home, I'm not going to really want to immediately play Yakuza. So that's going to have to be on the back burner. But man, this game is so fun. There's so many little mini games that are so ridiculous. And the reason why I think it's really enjoyable is because it is a very serious game, but it is tongue in cheek in a lot of points. The way that the main characters, Kiryu and Majima, however you want to pronounce it, the presentation is so just, it's hyper realistic in some points, it's ridiculous in some points, it's deadly serious in other points. There was definitely times where I kind of teared up a little bit, but just like even pulling up videos and watching just some of the cutscenes that happen or some of the actions that happen, I just can't help but smile at this series. It is so wonderful. It is so enjoyable. And if you like action fighting, it's not a fighting game, but it has a lot of fight sequences in it. If you like series where they don't take itself too seriously, a lot of dialogue with crazy interactions and characters, it is possibly one of the best series in games. Like I'm not joking when I say that. It is phenomenal. And so I always just want to talk about the series at this point because I'm so bummed that it took me so long. I'm really bummed that it took me so long to finally finish the game, but I'm super happy because at this point, now I can play through 0 to the newest game in the series all on one system and having it be completely playable with a controller, with no emulation, no graphical glitching or hiccups or anything like that, no technology having to switch between systems. It is the best way to play the series is on PC, and it's all right there, and it's all for free. It's all right there on Game Pass. If you have Game Pass or if you have it on Steam, like I said, I bought it on Yakuza 0, Kiwami 1, and Kiwami 2 on Steam. And it's all right there. So I'm just stoked playing through all these games. So like I said, I picked up Kiwami 1, which is basically the new engine or a remake of 1 with the new engine. And they also added in a bunch of extra stuff from Yakuza 0 to make it more feel like a true series that was planned all from the beginning. And if you play Yakuza 0, you're going to encounter characters from Yakuza 0 that were never originally in the first Yakuza game, Yakuza 1. Like, having that is so cool. It feels really, really well connected and planned out. Like, there's this whole thing in Yakuza 0 where you play pocket racers. And pocket racers are basically like little mini remote controlled track cars. And there's this character called the Fighter who is like this champion who's the main pocket racer guy, and he's the champion of pocket racing. And then he does a lot of commentating. You help him, you become friends in Yakuza 0. And then through playing Kiwami 1, I walk up to where that pocket racing street area is, and then I encounter him after over 10 years in the game. Like, I've been in prison for 10 years, and he's like, I know that face anywhere. That's Kiryu. Kiryu, how you doing, you son of a gun? And you're like, oh, fighter, how's it going? And it's just like, dude, that's so cool. And it doesn't feel hokey. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like a lot of games where it's like, oh, this was totally added in. This doesn't feel like the same game. It feels like weird adding content after the fact. No, it feels like right there. So I just thought it's an incredible game. I'm super excited to see where the story goes from here. Um, it's fantastic. I think I just kind of need to streamline it a little bit because, like I said, I got so sidetracked with the side missions that I spent like 3 days just doing side mission after side mission after side mission after side mission. I'm probably in the story about 10 hours, and I put 17 hours into the game, if that tells you anything. And that's only in the last like 4 days. Like, I've dropped a ton of hours into this game over the last several days. As soon as I'm done with work, as soon as I'm done cooking, as soon as we're done watching some stuff, like, she goes off and does her own thing, I start Yakuza up and start playing through it. Okay, well, that's enough Yakuza talk. So let's take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, I'll talk about the other game that I've been playing, because I've been playing a lot of games. Okay, so the other game that I've been playing is something that I don't think I would have ever come back to. Back in, I think this was 2017, 2015, 2016 at E3, there was a game that looked absolutely amazing. I think this was like even before then, 20, maybe 13 or 14. Rare, the developers that did GoldenEye and Banjo-Kazooie and Conquer and Perfect Dark and Donkey Kong Country, like, Rare was one of the best, if not the biggest, known developer in all of gaming at one point. They could not fail. Over the years, especially after Microsoft bought them, they kind of just dropped in quality. A lot of the original team members, left and they did their own thing. You had Free Radical doing the Time Splitter series, which they're announcing the new Time Splitters. I'm super excited for it. But, that game, they just announced the studio has come together. It's not even they don't even have anything to show for it, and it's not going to show up for a couple years at least. I'm going to say like 2000 or 2025 is probably when we're first going to see a new Time Splitters game. So I'm not holding my breath. I'm not waiting for it. I'm just excited because I like that series and I want a new Time Splitters game. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I am here to talk about Rare, and they showed off this game that was called, they didn't have a name for it or anything, but it was a pirate game. And I was stoked because it looked incredible. It looked a little bit cartoony. It didn't look super realistic, but at the time I was playing through like Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which is one of my favorite Assassin's Creed games, if not my favorite. Um, that game was so incredible because of how authentic being a pirate felt playing through that game. I was I was super excited for whatever Rare was going to do with a pirate game. And then over the years they started showing more and more of it, and then they did this beta before the game came out, like beta quote unquote, because it was basically a demo right before the game came out, like 2 weeks or a month before the game came out. And I played the internal closed beta or the closed demo of the game, and as nice as it was, like it looked phenomenal. The ocean was some of the best like ocean graphics in games at the time. There just wasn't a whole lot for me to do because it was a multiplayer game. First off, it's a big multiplayer game. And also, there's not really progression. The game that I'm talking about is Sea of Thieves. And if you remember when that game launched, it launched like a dud. So many people were like, dude, I played 45 minutes of it and I've seen everything there is in the game. And the whole point is like doing these missions over and over and over. And I hate that. It's the MMO, it's the Destiny type of gameplay loop that I hate. Do not tell me here's this a super big game that you need to pay $60 for. There's 45 minutes worth of content, and I just need to do it over and 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 over again to accumulate all this money and gold and all this currency to spend on cosmetic items when I'm playing a first person game. I'm not even going to see it. So I'm basically spending all my time to accumulate money to make other people look at me. Like, no, I'm not into that at all. So I played through the demo and I was like, there's got to be more to this. There's got to be a little bit more. So when people were playing it and they were like, "Oh, dude, this game looks like it's terrible," and I was like, "No, there's got to be more." I played the demo. It's there's got to be more. It's just wait until the game comes out. I was fully into the hype of that game, and it's the last game that I really got hyped about because I got burned so bad on it. I bought that game for $60, and I bought the Sea of Thieves controller, Xbox controller that they put out that has like the pirate skull on it. It's purple and like green turquoise, seafoam green. It glows in the dark. Like I was super into the controller, and then uh they announced like the day before it came out, after I already dropped the money on the pre-order, that it was coming to Game Pass day and date, and Game Pass was a buck. And I was like, I just dropped $60 on this game that I could have played for free basically, or spent $1 on. I'm pissed. And then after the game came out, I loaded it up. I played for 45 minutes and I went, this is the demo and there's nothing else here. And I heard that from all the other people too. And I played a little bit more of it. I think I played maybe 2 or 3 hours. I got my friend Sean to play it too. And we did a mission. And then it was just like, well, you've seen most of the game and we've been playing for like an hour. This is a big bummer. And the game just kept going and going. Everyone is hoping they'd release more content for it, and they didn't really for a while. It took a long time for them to start releasing a lot of content. It was just all cosmetic drop after cosmetic drop after cosmetic drop. and maybe a little bit of new missions here or there, but nothing substantial. So this year at E3, and the whole reason I'm talking about this is because at E3 they announced this new DLC expansion, whatever you want to call it. Because again, the game is technically you have to pay for the game, but if you play it on Game Pass, it's free. So they announced this new update called the Pirates Life update, and they got the Disney license. They've got the Pirates of the Caribbean license with Jack Sparrow and Barbossa and Davy Jones and Calypso, like all of it. And I was just like, I really like pirates. I really do. I'm not a big fan of them whoring out the Pirates of the Caribbean license at this point. I just let it be its own thing. You can use some of the settings and stuff, but don't throw Jack Sparrow in it. Like, just keep him as a movie character. They did the pirate stuff with Kingdom Hearts as well, but it's not something that I really, 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 really need or want. But whatever. And it's on Game Pass. I already own the game as well, so no matter what, I can play it for free. So I installed it and I just waited for the update to drop, and that was a couple nights ago. And it's just like, you know what? I don't really want to play Yakuza right now for at least a couple hours. So I waited for my wife to go to bed. I loaded up the Pirates DLC for Sea of Thieves. My character was still there with all the stuff. I opened it up and launched the game, and I got a bunch of money and cosmetic items because I've been playing. Technically, I've owned the game since the launch, and so like I haven't played it for like 2 years. And I got all this new stuff. And drops me on the island, and right away I see like the Pirates DLC area where you start the missions and all that. I load up the mission. I get on my ship. I sail to the area where it says start the mission. I start the mission, and right away, I feel like I'm in the ride. I feel like I'm experiencing the ride in my house, on my couch, playing a game. And it was like, dude, they're using the audio from the ride. They're using a lot of symbolism from the movies. They're using just all the atmosphere of what Pirates of the Caribbean is, not just the ride, but also the movies, and tying them all together, and then also creating their own new and unique thing too. You basically get transported into the underworld, and you find this skeleton that basically talks to you, and you're walking through. Like, the first 15 minutes are basically like a queue line for the ride, like a new ride. And that's where I really got excited. I was like, dude, it's hitting the nostalgia button, for me. And I'm not getting overhyped. I'm not flipping out. I'm not screaming and jumping in my seat like a crazy person. I'm just going, all right, cool. I'm enjoying this. That's all it is. And that's really like the whole difference between all of this stuff. You watch, like, I haven't done this, but I can almost guarantee you pull up a YouTube video of someone streaming the new Sea of Thieves pirate DLC, and they're going to be screaming and jumping and ripping out their hair because, oh my gosh, they're doing the pirates. It's like, dude, come on, stop freaking, being hyperbolic about this. This is cool. It's enjoyable, but that's it. It's not something to scream and rip your throat out about. It is just something that pulls in it pulls you in because of the association from the movies and the ride. So I really, really enjoyed it. It kind of got a little bit near the end of the walkthrough area, starting the mission, where it was like, okay, I get it. Like, you're doing the whole dead man tell no tales and keep your eyes on the horizon, and like all the ride elements and audio is being used, and it kind of gets a little bit overplayed, but then it finally does drop you into the mission and the story and the first area, where you basically meet this skeleton that is hanging up in like a cage high up on a mast, and you've got these broken ships that are run aground, and you basically have to free him. So you do this whole like puzzle running in platforming across these multiple broken ships that have run aground, and it's really cool. It's like, dude, this is great. And I'm also soloing this. I'm doing it by myself. I'm not meeting up with randos online. I'm not doing a multiplayer story. I'm just playing this as a single player game. And it's a little bit shallow. It doesn't have a ton of it. And when you get to the last part, which basically, I'm just going to talk about this because, like I said, this is like maybe an hour and a half worth of content at most. If you really, 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 really take your time, you meet up with Jack Sparrow on the ferry ship of the damned, and you free him. And the ferryman is like, "What have you done?" Or not Barbosa, Davy Jones with the Flying Dutchman shows up, and you have to battle them. So you have this big ship battle, and you're basically doing two things. You are loading cannons into the cannon and firing at the Flying Dutchman. You're using the cannons to basically shoot the Flying Dutchman with cannonballs, and you are also battling three monsters that come aboard the ship, and they kind of transport onto the ship, and then you kind of knock them down. They vanish away, and you do that multiple times. And I got really sick of it, and I finally finished it. But like soloing that part was really tedious and boring because after about two times, you kind of go, all right, this is the loop. I don't want to keep doing this. Just let me move on. And there's not really any skill to it. It is just continually doing things over and over and over again. And that's why I really don't like games like Dota or Destiny or, these other big MMO type of games where you're just doing the same thing over and over again. It's too repetitious. There's no skill involved. It's just making sure you find the path of least resistance. You go down into the deck, you find the cannonball area, you pick up the cannonballs, you walk over to the cannons, you load the cannons, you fire at the ship, you do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until the cutscene starts. And then again, every once in a while, you have a bad guy, one of the monsters, the bad pirates show up and teleport onto the ship, and you just kind of take out your sword and you whack away at him a couple of times, and then he's done. There's just no skill to it. And that's where I'm like, dude, I don't know how long I'm going to play through this. I don't think I'm going to stick with this all the way through to see the final end of the missions. I'll play a couple more, but if I find myself in a raid type situation where I'm just doing the same thing to this boss and it's taking 45 minutes, like I am out. I don't care what cosmetic item you give me. I don't care what type of cool colored sword I have. It is super not worth my time. And that's where I get really frustrated with these types of games. And that's why I didn't stick with Sea of Thieves. I'm not in it for cosmetic. I'm in it for story. And if the story's not there and the gameplay is super, 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 super bare bones and surface level and very, very shallow, that's why I dropped it. Because, like I said, I saw and I watched people and I wanted to get into that game, but it's such a shallow experience. You get on your ship and all of the hype about that game was make your own fun. I can do that, but I can't do it with a limited tool set. And that's really my issue with these types of games. The tool set is so shallow. Take a look at something like that versus Little Big Planet or Dreams, anything Media Molecule, basically, which is basically those two, anyways. But you look at those games and you go, all right, this is a level, or even Super Mario Maker. They're basically level editors and they're tool sets, and you get to use these tools to however you see fit. But when you have a fully crafted world that is just there, and it's the same few things over and over again. Same thing with No Man's Sky when it originally launched. Now that with all the updates, it's a much bigger and crazier game. You have bases that you can build, and base building seems really, really cool and interesting. And I would love to get into it, but again, I just don't have the time to spend, just devoted to that one game and learning all the intricate new stuff to it. Maybe at some point, but man, I just I love these games, but they're just not built the way that a game I think should be made. And someone would say, "Oh, that's super elitist." No, no, no. Hear me out. Listen, when I'm playing a game, I should be able to get to the beginning and the end without devoting my entire life to the game. And that's really the crux of this whole conversation that I'm having with myself is these types of games require everything from you. And that's not what a video game should be. You can add all this extra stuff, but there should never be a point where you devote your life to the game. And that's why I hate and I don't want to play any of the um, Souls games. The Souls games require you to devote your entire life to it. And it becomes this whole thing where it's so obscure and everyone wants you to not just play the game a certain way, which obviously is super annoying, but there's so many different like opinions on the game as well of the right way to play it and how to play it. It's like, give me the bullet points. Tell me the things that I need to know to be able to play the game and play it well. Like even Yakuza, going back to that game, like tell me what I need to do to play this game and see the most content that I can in a single playthrough without wasting my time. Same thing with the Sea of Thieves. If there was a guide on how to play through the Sea of Thieves by yourself without having to watch, 400 different YouTube videos with people who are just regurgitating the same information, I'd be down with that. If there was a literally like a quest thing saying in the game, do you want to play solo? If you do, here is all the stuff that you need to do. Here's like a quest log. Here's the difficulty you need to set it at. Like, bam, go. I don't need every single thing. I don't need, and we're watching a playthrough of Giant Bomb's Persona right now, Persona 4, and I watched it back in 2013, 2014, when I first like subscribed to premium and got all that content, but it's a real big bummer when you get people who are basically telling you you need to do this, and this, but they're going overboard on it. They're going way too in depth, and they're saying this is the way that you need to do it to min max your approach to the game. I don't want to do that. I don't want to cheat the game. I don't want to get every single little thing out of the game. I want to get the majority of the stuff on the main path of the game. And if there's some side content that's really, 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 really good and just like a little bit out of my way, great. But I'm not going to spend 400 hours going out of my way to get this one little thing. I use Giant Bomb a lot because I taught or I watched them so much. I was upstairs and I had Giant Bomb Infinite on, and they were doing the playthrough of Bloodstained. And I remember Dan talking about the Rava Baral, Robert Baral weapon that he kept saying, Vinny, you gotta get this, you gotta get this, you gotta get this, you gotta get this. And they spent like 4 episodes trying to get this stupid weapon, and they used it and they were like, this is fine, but it was so unnecessary and so not worth it. That's what I hate about the internet when you're trying to find out a way to play the game or get a good path through a game. That's why I just don't look online. I don't use guides. And when I find those games like Sea of Thieves or the Dark Souls series or any of that stuff, I just kind of steer clear of it. I don't want to be told I'm playing the game wrong, and there's a difference between playing the game wrong and playing it the way someone else wants to. I don't want to be told I'm playing the game wrong when I'm just not playing it the way someone else wants me to play it, which is stupid to begin with. And, but also, I don't want to waste my time with that stuff. I wrote an article, or I think it was the review, when I wrote my review for Red Dead Redemption 2. I used a phrase that I think a lot of people hate. When a lot of people, again, Giant Bomb, Dan Riker, when Dan Riker was playing Red Dead 2, and he just fully hated Red Dead 2 versus Red Dead 1. He loved Red Dead Redemption 1, but he hated 2. And he kept saying, "Oh, I just want to do this." And when I'm on a mission and I walked away from the mission area, I would fail the mission, have to do the whole thing over again. Like, and he wanted to just speed through the game, and the game's 80, it takes 80 hours to get through that game and stuff like that. That is, I said, you're playing the game wrong if you are speeding through the game and just min-maxing through the game. The game is a Western set in periods, a time period where life moved a lot slower. You cannot treat it like GTA because it is not GTA. It is a Western cowboy game. And there are going to be action sequences where you are running and rifling and picking up loot and looting dead bodies and having these intense, crazy shootouts and train robberies and stuff like that. And you can play that in the online portion like that, but you cannot treat the main storyline like that. The storyline is a single player, narrative driven game where they want you to experience the story at the pace that they set. And if you try and rush through it, you are going to be pissed off and upset. And that's where I saw a lot of people like kind of just go, dude, this is not the game I thought it was going to be, because they're treating it like GTA and they're not treating it like a slow, sauntering Western. And that's where I think a lot of people will get pissed off, is when they try to play the game wrong. When I play Sea of Thieves, I'm trying to solo it because I'm trying to play the game wrong. And that's why I don't like those games. And that's totally valid. And, it's the same. It's the opposite of what I was just saying with Red Dead. But at the same time, they are saying you can solo this stuff. It's just a different game. And that's why I'm not going to continue probably much with Sea of Thieves, or why I don't play Dark Souls, or why I don't play this or that. I'm not going to play the game, and I'm not going to enjoy it the way it's designed. And I'm not going to try and deviate from it, because I'm not going to be, the Dan Reichert. I'm not going to be the guy going, well, this game sucks. Why does it suck? Well, I'm not playing it I wanted to play it like GTA, and it's too slow and I'm failing missions because I'm deviating from the path. Well, it's like, yeah, no, duh. So that's my feelings on that whole situation. I thought it was a little hokey when they announced the Pirates of the Caribbean DLC stuff or update, because I was just like, oh, I don't need Jack Sparrow doing the whole like, here doggy. Like, I don't need that. It's in the ride. It was cute in the movie because it was a callback, and people were like, oh, hey, they're doing, a reference to the ride, but I don't need it also in the game. And I don't need references or recreations of the movie in the game, because we have the movie, and we also had that in Kingdom Hearts as well. With all of that stuff, there's so much of just recreating the movie stuff. I hate that. The movie's right there. I don't need it recreated. And that's why I hate live action movies of superhero stuff with superhero comics, because if you are basically just doing the same thing as the movie or as the comic book in live action, I don't need that. That's why it was like, oh, Infinity Gauntlet, what's going to happen? And so it was kind of like cool that they deviated from it in a way, but I think they did a poor job of it. As someone who really liked all those graphic novels and stuff like that, but whatever, that's a whole separate issue, and I'm not going to really get into it, nor do I really care. That's the real big issue, is I just don't care that much about this. Sea of Thieves seemed like it was going to be an awesome game. It was it was designed as a totally different experience that I don't really care for. So I'm just bummed out that I think I'm more bummed out that I spent money on something because they just didn't say what it really was. Same thing with No Man's Sky. You know, you got these developers that just don't really talk about what they're really making. Whether that's because they're afraid of the backlash or the marketing is just dishonest in a way, who knows? But that's been my last several weeks here of playing video games is Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami, and playing a little bit of that Sea of Thieves. I would like to play it. I'm just not going to in the next week because I just don't have the time. You know, I've got a few hours left in the day before I go to bed, and then I got to get up super early and jump on a plane, and I'm not going to be doing jack on that plane. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Game or Die podcast. Thank you very much for listening. I've been your host, Ryan Moore. And like I said, as always, you can find written reviews and other stuff on my website, gameordie.net. Thank you very much. Have an awesome day.
For breaking the law, breaking the world 壊せ切り裂けてんだね For breaking the rule 六法全書じゃ縛れない波乱分子さ振り上げた握り拳が俺たちのジャッジメント愛さえも知らない不良品の野良犬さだけど血や金じゃ餌付けはできないぜ傷ついて全て失っちまっても染まっちゃならねえそれこそが Justice for breaking the law breaking the world 壊せbreaking the rule 俺ら遺産や懐かない波乱分子さ振り上げろ握り拳を俺たちはそうさ俺たちがジャッジメント